I'd like to take a moment to thank the Blockchain Academy. The Blockchain Academy is an educational training firm offering blockchain training to the enterprise. The Blockchain Academy offers courses for both management and developers, offering delivery online and in live classrooms. The Blockchain Academy works with enterprise clients to create and deliver innovative training programs globally. They recently announced a new blockchain course targeted towards attorneys. To learn more about the Blockchain Academy, visit them at www.theblockchainacademy.com.
This is the Blockchain 360 podcast. Blockchain 360 is a podcast of interviews and discussions about the current state and direction of blockchain. Thank you for joining us today. If this is your first time listening, then thank you for coming. The Blockchain 360 podcast is produced weekly for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at our website, blockchain360.co. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter at Blockchain360. All links discussed today are included in the show notes.
My name is Brian Nielsen, and I'm your host here on Blockchain 360, where we talk about everything blockchain. My guest today is Konstantin Richter. He is the founder and CEO of Blockdaemon, which is a nodes as a service platform that empowers businesses to simplify and effectively manage blockchain applications. He's worked in a number of different industries and had some notable successes with companies Autotube, Lookbooks, Jenny Mobile, and DNA Stack. He began his career at PricewaterhouseCoopers, where he honed his analytical skills as a strategic change consultant. He joined a Dutch telecom AG in the late 90s, first as an assistant director to the executive board office, and then as manager within T-Mobile's international data business. Konstantin was promoted to senior manager and oversaw the growth of T-Mobile's music business from 0 to 25 million. He went on to serve as global director for software and services at Nokia, where he negotiated global software framework deals to combat its latent device proliferation. Konstantin, welcome to Blockchain 360.
Thank you so much. Great to be here and great to talk to you.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. So let's start with a little bit about who you are, and then we're going to get into Blockdaemon. So tell me a little bit about your background.
Sure. I'm born in Maiden, Germany, actually, many years ago. And I've been working in the sort of software network technical world of data at Deutsche Telekom and at Nokia for over a decade before I unleashed my entrepreneurial vigor and became an entrepreneur. I've spun up companies in the media, SaaS, B2B space, all around deep associative data models in music, photo, and video. And so what that means is back in the day, when cloud came around, technical debt was a real issue. And really what that meant is, how do you reconfigure metadata around content items that was previously associated to it? So when you have 5,000 songs and now you want to have a different, a different form field connected to them, how do you do that easily? And then how do you rejuggle the metadata and plug something that's a utility like your CRM system into a marketplace? And so those were the sort of kind of models that I looked for, mainly because marketplaces back in the day got fantastic multiples. So when you looked at it from a hardcore financial way, marketplaces got 40x on revenue. So how to pivot data utility plays into marketplaces was the sort of modus operandi of that. I've, since 2015, been active in the blockchain space. I was a board advisor to a company called Gem.co. Gem was one of the big first blockchain enterprise backed entities, did a large A round. Back in the day when, like Chain and a couple of the others that are still around, and Gem is still active, run by Micah Winkelspecht, who's one of the pillars in the blockchain community and a great friend and a great guy. And so I learned a lot about enterprise grade blockchain services, which really, what I learned is that there isn't really much there. And then over time, when that evolved a little bit, became more and more interested in the different verticalizations in that space. And so before we started recording, we talked about that I'm a board member of MadHive. That's the leading edtech media blockchain company, equity-backed and also now ICO'd.
Yes, and by the way, for all listeners, that is an episode from our first season. Adam was one of our guests, so you can go back and also hear about that.
Yeah, Adam Helfgott, is a great guy, and we're collaborators and friends, and spend a lot of time and a long time thinking about how to create blockchain solutions for different verticals in the enterprise space. And
so wait a sec. So you have this background in software and technology, and you didn't use blockchain or didn't really think about it until 2015. But now, what was the impetus? What was that tipping point that caused you to really think about the blockchain as a solution for the problems that you were encountering?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think the interesting evolution from our perspective was building these sort of SaaS closed up ecosystems on large clouds like Amazon, created a model where you run your margin based on the sort of underlying, you run a slim margin based on the cost of data. And cost of data is something that you couldn't really manage at all. It's something that you're beholden to Amazon or any one of the other big providers. And what got us really, what's interesting to us is the sort of not just taking out the middleman, but actually also democratizing an underlying infrastructure and a real new commercial model away from a traditional profit-centric viewpoint, meaning that you can actually scale up technology and infrastructure that is inherently for free if it's tokenized, right? And so that was sort of the first sort of intellectual, interesting viewpoint from my perspective, because as a software guy, I spent my life trying to eliminate technical debt. And one way to eliminate technical debt is by having maximum flexibility. But the true and best way to eliminate technical debt is not to have it in the first place. And so
exactly.
And so that was kind of where I got excited conceptually in what data, blockchain as a data management solution. And, now obviously, I've seen and learned a lot since. And so, my views have, changed, I'm sure, over time. But that was what got me excited about it.
They evolve. That's not change. They evolve.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the interesting things, and also just to kind of start it off, is anything I say, I've been on the board of some protocols. I've done a few ICOs. I'm part of the proof of existence project, which is Poet, as well as MadHive. I've co-founded a consortium called EdLedger in the space. And so I'm not saying that I'm an expert, but I have active experience in the place. I've spent the last few years trying to, and create enterprises and organizations that further the use case of crypto and blockchain. And so I have a viewpoint based on active engagement with a wider community. And so, but that said, it's a way too dynamic ecosystem for any one person to, have a great view on things. There's so many subtleties to it. And so, I have my worldview, and I'm sure there's much more qualified people with a completely, the diametrical opposite worldview of that. So just want to put that out there.
That's good. So let's talk about then your new company, Blockdaemon. So how old is Blockdaemon, and what does it really do? I mean, it says on your website that it is blockchain nodes as a service. So let's first talk about where you conceptually came up with the idea, and then let's go into explaining what is a blockchain nodes as a service type product.
Yeah, great question. So the genesis block of Blockdaemon was fairly, kind of classic story. We were trying to deploy Ethereum nodes for EdLedger, the consortium I co-founded, and my co-founder Arun, who's the CTO, was the engineer on that project, and we were, kind of talking about the complexity of, hey, the tool set for existing blockchain protocols is very poor compared to what you have existing in the cloud space,
Exactly.
And so, you have, in the cloud space, you have things like EngineYard, you have Heroku, You have a bunch of different cloud orchestration platforms that help you deploy and connect infrastructures to any type of application. And so just very simply put was, the best engineers are the lazy ones. Who, my co-founder was like, dude, I spent a day Googling, trying to find a simple tool that allows us to easily deploy a node and connect it to an infrastructure. And unfortunately, I couldn't find anything. And sort of out of that, started
out of that need.
Yeah, it came a brainstorming session, and the Heroku for blockchain sort of model was born, which at the time, was kind of novel. These days, even Heroku is trying to be the Heroku for blockchain. But back then, I think we were the first who, because we're so practical and builders, we built enterprise software. The actually really pretty abysmal state of play made it obvious that before anything serious can be built, the tooling landscape and infrastructure for blockchain needs to improve vastly. And so I think we were a little, early in that sense. We started this journey a year ago. Now it's a very popular subject, the scalability issues, the infrastructure cost issues, the complexity of deploying software and connecting protocols to infrastructures. A lot of companies now have their own different solution sets and ways of addressing it. We were the sort of the first one in that space, and really wanted to set out to borrow the best in breed software solutions that exist in the cloud space. So from the beginning, we said we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to be conceptually too complex. Like a lot of my fellow brethren in the blockchain space, there's fantastic projects fixing infrastructure shortfalls for blockchains, but it's these sort of like, we raised $50 million and we've got a 4-year roadmap, and in year 4 you're going to see this great stuff. We wanted to be here and now, and so we made a conscious decision to not do an ICO, to actually join an accelerator, which was Plug and Play in Palo Alto. The guys who did Factom, they incubated Stella with Jed McCullough and those guys. And so we felt that's a good home for us to really, sit together, not spend a lot of money, and fine tune, the proposition that we wanted to go to market with, and then raise a convertible debt note, and then a seed round from pure enterprise VCs, meaning companies who invest in cloud enterprise companies and companies we were trying to emulate in the blockchain space. So really kind of taking the approach that the complexity of blockchain infrastructure has outgrown the sort of hacky nature of solutions, and we're going to bring the best of breed of cloud infrastructure to that space. And with that came Comcast Ventures, who have huge network capacities and that come with it. Bold Start Ventures, which is probably the best seed stage infrastructure and architecture investor in the cloud space. And then also actually the founder of Heroku and the fund that was spun up by the founders of Heroku, Heavybit, are also respective investors and advisors to our company. And so, when people say Heroku for blockchain, we can say, hey, we've got the founders of Heroku actually invested and active in our business, So we knew we needed a lot of structural help, and we wanted to do it the right way. So that was sort of around a year ago when we started the journey.
All right. So for the non-technical people out there and the non-technical listeners, can you explain then in simpler details, what is the blockchain node as a service solution? I mean, everybody knows that there are cloud implementations out there. IBM is offering one. AWS is offering it. Google offers it. DigitalOcean offers it. There's just a myriad of solutions out there. So what is this concept of service, blockchain node as a service? What does that really mean for the non-technical person?
Great. Well, great question. And let me maybe describe it that way. The service component really means that we're providing a tool that you pay for in monthly increments to use to configure and deploy a software product. So that's part one. Part two is that what makes us different is any blockchain stands on stilts that are nodes. And so nodes are the transmitters into a blockchain network. They contain a full copy of the full ledger. They're the voting mechanism in the consensus mechanism. And so the Bitcoin blockchain has 10,000 nodes. Ethereum, I think, is somewhere between 20 and 30,000 nodes. And, there's different consensus and mining models. And Bitcoin, you use nodes, you can run nodes, and then you have mining nodes as well. And it's a proof of work model. Ethereum functions a little differently. But really what it means is, in order to be an active participant in any blockchain network, you need to deploy a node and connect to it. Without that connection, you can't, you have no active interface into the actual ledger. And so you don't get a copy of the ledger. You can't submit transactions to the ledger. And so think of it as the pen to the paper that is the ledger. And so nodes are the quintessential cornerstones of blockchains. Now, what we wanted to do, and you've referenced some of our sort of partial competitors, is to really focus on nodes in itself. And so Amazon, IBM, Azure, DigitalOcean, all those companies are partners of ours, but they all have verticalized solution sets. So Amazon will allow you to deploy particular Ethereum templates on an Amazon cloud. And the same is possible with Azure, and the same is possible on DigitalOcean. So they have their own mono protocol and mono cloud, meaning they allow you to deploy on their infrastructure only, on one protocol only. And to us, the big change that blockchain brought was actually privacy and security. And decentralization is a core component of what makes blockchains attractive.
Right.
And so for us, we wanted to be multi-cloud, meaning we wanted to work with all these infrastructure providers and actually distribute nodes across all of them. So that a particular closed blockchain network, for example, that has 50 nodes, for example, has 10 nodes run on Amazon, 10 on Google, 10 on Azure, 10 on our own infrastructure. And some of it is semantical, because you could say, well, what's really, why is this really bad to have it all on Amazon? But, I think it's an ideological question of data decentralization. And so so that's point one. Point two is, because all these different cloud providers charge enormous amounts of money to work with blockchains, mainly because the way they traditionally charge for cloud pricing is disastrous for blockchain pricing, because blockchains don't have a sort of, they don't operate within a certain lane. Blockchain CPU and memory requirements go up and down very drastically based on the sync time. Right. And so, but what Amazon will do is they will charge you to the max amount that you will need at any given point in time. Right. So what that means is, when you activate and sync a node, you'll have a lot of traffic, you'll need a lot of memory and a lot of CPU power, and Amazon will continuously bill you at that heightened stage.
Right.
And so that's why all these guys love it, is because they make a killing. The margins on this are enormous for all those cloud providers. And so for having a multi-cloud ecosystem here is also important to ensure that there's price competition across these networks, so that you can actually...
There's no dependency on one.
There's no dependency on one, and then two down the line, and that's a big word, but data arbitration models are also interesting, and they are particularly interesting when you think about tokenizing them. Now, that's a long shot in the future, but that's totally a possibility. And so we believe that the infrastructure costs for blockchains should be substantially lower than to what it is today. It needs to be, if we ever want to have consumer-grade applications run on blockchain. Right. And so we want to be one of the impetus providers towards that in that space. But so what the product does for the layman, very simply put, when you go to our website, there's a Blockdaemon or daemon.com, whatever you like more. There's a video up there, and you can create an account. You'll come to a web app, and it'll say, what type of blockchain would you like to deploy, a private one or a public one? If you do a public, we offer Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin, and you can just, you click on Bitcoin, you click on the software infrastructure provider you would like for an individual node. You can use our own, you can use Amazon. You pick a location, you hit a button, and it deploys your node within 90 seconds. And then you're connected to the network. We have a couple of configurations ready.
Oh, wait a second. Hang on. So what you're talking about really is you're trying to resolve the challenges of launching your own blockchain network. Because as you pointed out, part of the problem is that there are a lot of solutions out there, but they can also be quite expensive. So what are the top 5 challenges of launching a blockchain network?
Yeah, great. I mean, great question. And so first off, the first issue is that there's, what do you actually physically launch on, right? So most people are totally disorientated because you have probably around 25 different protocols that are of relevance to any particular use case. There's the big ones, and then there's specific ones underneath it, meaning, do you go on Quorum, Corda, Fabric, Ethereum, any of the new ones? Do you want to be on EOS or Tezos or Stellar? Or, so there's all these different networks that all have different node requirements. And actually, most people already at that early stage of like how to pick a protocol are already baffled. And so as an engineer, what you need to do then is start to read Quorum and Reddit channels and figure out, do some research. Now that gets hard because most of the research reports that get published are published by verticalized ideologists. So Consensus will publish a great report on why Ethereum is your protocol of choice.
Right.
And then Hyperledger will publish a report that says, this is how Fabric is better than everyone else. And then JP Morgan will publish a report that says Quorum is better than anyone else. So, so there isn't really an agnostic provider here, a little bit like Rackspace in the cloud space. Actually,
Right.
That was something we looked at. They have a very slick ROI calculator for cloud costs across all providers. And we want to mirror that for blockchain protocols on infrastructure. So to actually say, what is actually the functionality and cost if you would take that use case and put it on Ethereum versus on Fabric. And
you do that? Blockdaemon does that?
Well, I mean, right now we do it verbally because we've deployed on all those different infrastructures.
Sure.
But obviously a big technical goal for us is to actually have an emulator of sorts that mirrors the function of all of the major protocols across networks. So you can actually just toy and play with it. It's a relatively large undertaking, but it's, that will be one of the logical conclusions of our roadmap. And so right now, a lot of our work is actually really telling people, asking them, what's your particular use case? This is Quorum is by far the best solution, or Stellar, or
right. Simple decision
Ethereum.
Trees. Like, okay, tell me what it is, and we'll narrow it down to what the solution should be.
And that solves problem number one, which saves an engineer a lot of different time. Now, once you pick a solution, you have to spend actually a lot more time in order to actually read up and learn about it. And so the way we think of it is a good engineer will spend 4 to 5 days kind of sort of figuring out how to really set all this up and what type of Amazon account do I need and what type of node and how do I write it? Do I go to on Ethereum to Infura? Like there's all these different tools.
Right.
Everybody says something else. And so we make it seamless. You just click a button. You don't care about anything else. And so that's a huge saving that normally a developer won't have. Then you have a deployed node. Now, the big issue with a deployed node is there's a lot of work to be done to actually continue to update the node and ensure that it's synced correctly to the network. And so once you actually start to run an individual node, what you'll see is, and you can ask any developer, is it's a total cluster. I don't want to say the bad word, but it's very, very complicated. It's a cluster problem of continuously spending time figuring out what the latest state of the protocols are. And so we provide a simple dashboard. We manage nodes for you. We provide all the different data items you might need. Obviously, we have support around it. So it takes away from the sort of DevOps, the DevOps component of what that would normally look like for you. And
Sure.
so that's number 3. Number 4 is we offer much cheaper pricing because we do this a lot and we think about how to do this efficiently a lot. And we do that across all protocols and all networks. And so we negotiate better rates. We function a little bit like a shared services model where projects de facto are really, and that's also coming to a services model, it's a little bit like a Soviet Union, which is probably the worst example of a centralized state. But when it comes to capital, it's powerful, which means instead of 10 large blockchain projects all having their own relationship with Amazon, we're pooling those resources and we're actually purchasing the infrastructure in bulk.
Economies of scale, sure.
That's right. And so that's another huge factor. And then, lastly, the other big thing that we're, need to evolve and that we're working on very hard is you're also joining a developer ecosystem and a Slack community that can help you consistently with any type of problem 24/7. And so we're also, we want to be the place you come to in order to ask your DevOps related questions. Now, again, this is all complex stuff. the current state of affairs, we publish public Bitcoin and Ethereum nodes in 3 clicks on 3 different infrastructure providers around the world. We do Quorum, Fabric, and Stellar. We're the exclusive node deployer for Stellar. It's a protocol we really like and think very highly of. And so we have around 10 blockchain ecosystem partners where we run the complete infrastructure for them. And but that said, we're 20 people. We closed the seed round. There's a lot of work to be done here, but we have revenue. And I'd say the average age of engineers in our group is a little older. We look for people who have enterprise grade backgrounds. And so what that means is we figure out how to connect our DevOps process into a continuous deployment cycle of an enterprise. And so, and that sort of sounds a little maybe overly technical, but really what that means is we want to build professional integration points, APIs, and SDKs that allow real enterprises to use our services without a loss of professionalism or security.
I would like to take a moment to thank one of our sponsors, the Blockchain Academy. The Blockchain Academy is an educational training firm offering blockchain training for developers and stakeholders. The Blockchain Academy is currently offering the following live courses: Blockchain Security, Hyperledger Developer Workshop, and Ethereum 0 to DApp. Visit the Blockchain Academy's website for course outlines and course dates. The Blockchain Academy's courses can be delivered as a company-specific training, tailor-made to fit your organizational needs, delivered both on-site and online. The Blockchain Academy's training is cost-effective, flexible, and can be conducted in a manner that best suits your organizational needs. To learn more about the Blockchain Academy, visit them at www.theblockchainacademy.com. I find this fascinating. So the question I'm really going to ask is walk me through that process of actually doing it. So I know what you basically said is that I need to actually, you're going to help me at least identify which platform is going to be best for me from a deployment standpoint. But beyond that, so what are these 3 steps? You talk about it, the blockchain cluster in 3 steps. So I have an idea. What are the 3 steps that I would use to engage with you and how you would get me then up to speed?
So we have 3 different tiers of products. If the easy part is, and I urge you, and it's a much wider ideological discussion. I believe anyone, if you're invested in Bitcoin, you should run your own node. Nodes are the identity layers of crypto, and so I feel like the value added on that's brought by actually owning a node and being part of that consensus mechanism is super important. And so for us, so I just want to put that out there. So the easiest product is you deploy an individual node, you go to our website, you create an account, and you go on a public node, which is Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and you pick Bitcoin, and all it says Bitcoin. You click a button. It's as simple as that. And then it'll ask you to select an infrastructure provider. You can work with your existing Amazon account. You could purchase an Amazon bucket via us, or you use our own infrastructure. We actually run our own, when I say data center, we're obviously not doing that. My investors would shoot me. But we do run a rack. And so we offer very, very competitive pricing to store fully synced nodes, $14.99 a month.
Wow.
And it's an actual full node, so it's not just a template that Amazon or any of the other solutions have. It's an actual node. You can connect it to your Mist wallet and play with it. Now, it's a little bit for the aficionados. It's not an everyday person that would want a node. I think over time, people will, many, many more people will own nodes because that's where we keep our data and how we interface into an ecosystem. And so, and that's the easiest thing. And so right now it's literally, we call it a 3-click deployment. And so we make it very, very easy. It's actually so easy that I think the way we've structured it is problematic for us in a different sense, that it's so easy that you can spin up a Bitcoin node in 2 minutes, and then you have a full node running. And then the question is really, what do I do with this? And right. So we made it, I think, nearly too easy, because it's very easy for people to deploy nodes now. And that's why we have, like kind of sort of a baby version of a dApp store, a couple of integrations and configurations that we offer so you can make use of it. But it's still fairly simplistic on that level. But then you become an active participant in the network. And so it's 3 clicks. Keep it as simple as possible. The whole goal of the user experience is actually to take choices away from you. And so the next layer we're going to build is to ask you about what degree of decentralization you need, what is the throughput, how many participants sit in your network. So we will actually eliminate protocols that you shouldn't have the choice at all, because they're totally unsuitable for you. And we will probably not even show you the individual infrastructure providers, Amazon, Azure, Google. We will actually just show you one bucket of infrastructure, and then we run data arbitrage across everyone.
Sure.
So you actually have, by default, a multi-cloud infrastructure. And so that's how folks engage with us. And so we came to it, we built something that does something complex very, very easily. Now the challenge for us is, how do we offer more services around it so people can actually continue to evolve and come back to us to use these nodes. And so that's item number 1. Item number 2, the product we sell the most right now is a network management tool. That is very cool, but it's a very simple, we call it, because we're really cool, the white label version, which is a horrible name. And we got to, we just brought on a great product manager, and we're thinking a lot about how to name these things. But really what it is it offers a pre-configuration workbench where we can pre-configure a particular node on a particular network, and then you can invite people via email to it who need to identify themselves via their GitHub login. GitHub is a code repository that was just acquired by Microsoft. We probably now have to... Yep. We probably now have to look for a different one, because that could be too decentralized for a lot of the blockchain guys. And so, but really what that was is, imagine, I'll give you a live example of a partner, Goldcoin. So Goldcoin is a stable coin using, an IoT component of actual, currency backed by actual gold, and you can actually physically track the asset. So you don't have what, we have with Tether and some of the other currencies right now, where they say they're backed by dollars, but you can't see the dollars backing them.
Right.
So gold,
there's no transparency.
That's right. And so there's this sort of IoT game being played for stable tokens. That's, a great use case. And so we've built the infrastructure for them. And so that particular network runs on Quorum, and they need 60 outside validators to confirm transactions. And those are banks, those are, commodity traders and other platforms. And none of those participants know how to deploy a blockchain node, nor to manage a blockchain network or connect to it. And so even though they have all these things teed up, these partners were going to them saying, great, can you send us an engineer to now set all this up? And so they said, oh, that sounds really tedious. Blockdaemon, can you build us a backend that's white labeled, meaning there's still a Blockdaemon logo on it, and then there's a Goldcoin logo on it, and we send everyone who has a link and is pre-approved lands on this landing page, and all they can do is deploy a Goldcoin node there. There's no choice but Goldcoin node, and then they can pick an infrastructure and they hit a button and they're connected to our network. It's all pre-configured, and you run it all behind the scenes. So to every participant who has to run a node in the network, it's a 90-second exercise that's super simplistic.
Right. So here's a question. So a lot of these companies now are going to start to experiment with various platforms and various versions of the blockchain technology. What challenges are they going to face? I mean, what's the risk of saying, I start on one blockchain and I find that it's ill-conceived or ill-configured for what my needs are. I need to switch to a different one. I mean, is that going to start to happen a lot? Do you think that will be a problem? And what does Blockdaemon actually do to help alleviate that problem?
Yeah, I mean, and that's you referenced the sort of one of the many pseudo holy grails of blockchain, interoperability. When I talked about technical debt will be much vaster. The protocol debt will be much, much higher than anything we've seen before, which is
for your listeners who are unfamiliar with that term. Would you explain that technical debt?
So really what I mean is that you build an application and an infrastructure using particular components in a software stack that it's very costly if you want to port components of that application onto a different infrastructure. And so what that means is purely, let's say you build it in a certain way and it costs you $10,000 a month to run it. And then in 2 years later, there's another platform. And if you would have built it on that, it would cost you $2,000 a month to run on. And so now you're kind of stuck with, can I actually physically port all my data easily onto this other stack? And what you'll find is, no, you can't. Because normally a lot of the data fields are pretty hard coded, so you have to actually re-platform, which, depending on the data fields and how much information is there, can cost you enormous amounts of money and take a lot of time. And so the same will happen with protocols, where people are committed to particular protocols and they build applications on top of it. And then, for example, the network, like a good example is Ethereum right now is getting a lot of stake because they have a lot of scalability issues. Every blockchain does, Bitcoin does too. There's no reason to get glump, or whatever the term is. That's right. And so so let's say you want to move from Ethereum to Fabric. Right. As an enterprise, you're like, well, there's too many problems here, but we've built our whole stack on Ethereum. Every engineer in the room here knows Ethereum. We never looked at Fabric, and now we got to read up on it and hire people and spend money, and it's going to be really, really expensive.
Right.
So the jump from one protocol to another is going to be expensive. The reason why that's a big factor is because now we're sort of in the age of the war of the protocols, which is all of the large ICOs that you've seen are pretty much pseudo Ethereum competitors.
Right. Quorum is just a replication of Ethereum.
That's right. And that's a good example. And then there's EOS and all the others that are coming, and people are saying, they can also live side by side. But ultimately, there's going to be a lot of competition on these protocols, and some of them will go away. So you build a stack, and then suddenly and I'm not going to name names, but you're on one protocol, and then in 5 years, that protocol doesn't exist anymore.
The abandonment of it, that's a huge risk. People don't even talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a real thing. And so interoperability between protocols has been a subject for some time. There's actually a great project that we're building the infrastructure for called Aeon that tackles that subject exclusively. And so that's been around and is a fantastic technical project, and we're super proud to partner with them. And so there's solutions to handle it. From our perspective, what we're going to do is we're going to develop an SDK that allows you to port data relatively easily. Now, technically, porting data from one infrastructure to another, that's actually relatively easy, from one protocol to another, isn't technically difficult. It's complex to figure out what to do with the data that happened in the past.
Right.
And so it's not so much a technical issue than one based on principles on how do you how do you copy past transactions into a database that then isn't on a blockchain and start doing something new on a new blockchain. And so there's a lot of different thought models on how that can be handled. One of the ways we are thinking about it is by actually building a blockchain mainnet of different nodes that actually where people hash their data headers into our enterprise blockchain that then gets hashed into, for example, Ethereum. So you hash the headers, so you can create a chain of headers to validate physical payments on a very small network that's much easier to port, for example. So it gets overly technical here, but those sort of REST APIs, hashing blockchains into blockchains is one way to physically go about it. And we spend a lot of time thinking about it because it's one of our survival mechanisms. As stated, multi-protocol and multi-cloud means also ultimately no cost of friction and movement in between them.
Right.
And so, if we want to survive, that's something we need to offer.
So it was recently announced that Comcast had backed you. How is it, and how are you working with them to achieve your goals?
So, and I'm proud to say, maybe I get in trouble, but we're the only direct blockchain investment Comcast has made to date. Comcast is, obviously a tricky company, but it's insanely large. Comcast is actually, after Amazon, the largest infrastructure provider for mining nodes on Bitcoin, which I actually didn't know.
I didn't know that either.
That's right. And so they obviously run a lot of infrastructure and networks, and, it's a $180 billion company. And so, they offer us enormous access to particular use cases, workflows, Their venture group is, ultimately you take money because you fall in love with a partner. For us, the partner was a gentleman called Gil Beda. He was a very successful CTO in his past life, as somebody who can geek out about a product roadmap, and has an insane network and knows how to utilize Comcast muscles to his startup's benefit. And so we met him at CES actually in January this year, and we weren't really raising around. We had enough money in the bank, and I've been subsidizing the business, but he made a very compelling case of, why don't you bring, first degree Class A investors on the table and let us help you build this up to become really, truly, the Heroku or New Relic of blockchain. And so, and that's really how we started this journey. And so, it's enormously beneficial for us. It was a great validation also to us as a group. I think there's, because we need that trust when we talk to enterprises about running infrastructure and deploying nodes, because when you think about it, a lot of those guys want their nodes on-prem,
right,
behind firewalls. They need to trust us with, we can put them on our infrastructure. So they need to have a sense that, we are a serious enterprise, where there's serious repercussions if we don't do certain things right, where they know that we have all the right insurances, that we have all the right, all the stuff that come with, an investment from one of the largest companies in the world is, you need to put all these different things in place.
Absolutely. All right. So what are your visions for blockchain for the next 2 or 3 years?
Well, blockchain. Blockchain.
Blockdaemon.
Blockdaemon. So I think the important part for me is I really want to make sure that we help enterprises to build blockchain solutions on top of decentralized infrastructures. I do feel the subject of decentralization is getting a little bit of a bad rap because of the heightened computational power and infrastructure costs associated with it. But the concept of privacy and security is at the core of blockchain, and I believe that's a substantial value. And so going back to even like the cypherpunk manifesto that was written back in the day, it's all about you being able to choose when and what to reveal of yourself. And so that quintessential component of blockchain is vital, and that means that you need to offer decentralization as well as efficiencies. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build that bridge of offering people fully decentralized, private and public blockchains that reap the benefits of what blockchains truly are in a sustainable and fiscally responsible manner. And so that's what we're in the market for.
Right.
I think we're overall very early. I think we're earlier than people think. There's going to be a lot of trial and error. And so I think in 2-3 years, I'm hoping that we will power 20 to 25% of the world's nodes, and that we'll run over 1,000 node enterprise grade infrastructure that we can use as a mainnet. People can hash much smaller chains into that we can then hash into a bigger chain. And so I want to build a complete decentralized infrastructure set. And that's what we're hoping to deliver over time.
Okay. So from a product standpoint, what is on the horizon for the rest of 2018 and maybe even into Q1 and Q2 of 2019? You've talked about a number of different tools that you've been creating. So what is on the horizon, that immediate horizon, with regards to that?
Sure. So right now, we're all about bundling up the very complex technology solutions that we've built. And so offering network management solutions, clear pricing packages, and blended pricing, including nodes and infrastructure in one. That's one. We will add, all the different, we're adding Fabric is going live, Quorum is live now. So we're going to add a couple of other protocols on top of it. We're going to launch our SDK to start to port data and our mainnet by end of this year. The mainnet is a function of every 10th node we deploy ourselves. And so it's a little bit of a shared services mainnet. Sure. So we're starting to build it now. It's going to take us some time to get up to, so we need to deploy 10,000 nodes in order to get our 1,000 nodes running. And so I'm hoping to have a good amount of like maybe 20 or 30 complete blockchain ecosystems using our infrastructure to power their solution set by end of year. And so you're going to hear some of them I can talk about, like Goldcoin. Others are very, I've referenced some names and we're about to make some announcements. Stella, I can be public about, that's about to go live. And so it's very important for me to make sure that people understand the distinction from us to other projects is we have live customers. You can actually go onto our site and, as I said, deploy nodes and pay with credit card or crypto. And so we're making blockchain very tangible as a developer tool. Was one of the core mantras that we had. And you're also going to see a lot of fine-tuning on the UI, as well as some ability to add like smart contracts, some more data components. We might add not a dApp store, but a couple of apps on top of it that we deem relevant. But we want to keep it fairly light and focused for now. The focus is on the multi-cloud, mainnet, and SDKs.
All right. Well, that sounds fantastic. This has been fascinating because, the biggest problem that almost everyone has is on the deployment side. Everyone talks about it and they sit down and they come up with a protocol that they think they can work with, but they have almost no ability, like you said, to actually sit down and quickly deploy what they're trying to do. I'm actually so surprised that I hadn't heard about you previously to actually starting the engagement to have you come on as a guest. This is a fascinating story, and I wish you the best.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. This is really fantastic. Anyway, thank you again for joining us here on Blockchain 360. And for those of you who are interested in knowing more about Blockdaemon, in the show notes, there'll be information as to where you can link to them on their website as well as their Twitter feed.
Thank you.
The Blockchain 360 podcast is produced weekly. Have a question? Want us to interview someone specific? Wish to hear about a particular topic? Let us know. You can email podcast@blockchain360.co or tweet us on Twitter @blockchain360 or at our website blockchain360.co.